Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As we welcome you once again this evening to the airwaves of Salam Media. This is Wednesday night with myself, Inayet Wadee, as we welcome our listeners, our viewers on the various platforms of Salam Media. Another Wednesday evening, another panel discussion. Now, this time around, we are focusing on the youth, and this comes against the background of the matric results that were announced last week. Now, with all the euphoria, with all the celebrations that had taken place, and also looking at the matric results in general, the second highest since 2019, and we've seen so much being said about the matric results and the achievements of these young people as they reach the milestone of their schooling career, the culmination of the schooling career, and certainly it is on a high, and it is something that needs to be celebrated. It is something that we need to feel proud about. We need to be happy about. But the real world actually starts after matric, and there would be thousands upon thousands who have chosen to further their career by going to universities, but there are many who will not make it to university. And as we speak right now, there are many graduates who are unemployed. And this is the critical question: where to for our youth, the youth, our future? We hear it often, we hear it over and over again. But is there a future for our youth, where we are looking at youth unemployment statistics in South Africa at around 70%? So, do they really have something to celebrate against a very bleak outlook going into the future, considering where we are as a country economically, ESCOM, load shedding, and the country is at a low? And what future prospects, what hope is there for young people going into the future? Is there any hope for them in the country? Now, we have assembled a panel, and mostly young people this evening, which is very encouraging to note. We've got Ayanda Khumalo, who is the program manager at the Unemployed Graduate Association. We also have got Chokoe, spokesperson, National Youth ICT Council. We've got Irfaan Mangera, Activism Program Manager at the Kathrada Foundation. And we have got Vhahangwele, Tsotetsi, Chairperson of Project Youth South Africa. So I see all the panelists have come up on the screen. Ayanda, I see you right next to me on the screen. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Inayet, and good evening to the panelists as well, and also the viewers.
Yes, Alu Chokoe, good evening to you, and wonderful you're able to join us. I think Alu has frozen for some reason or the other. There are network issues coming down the screen. Irfaan Mangera, assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Okay.
Walaikum salam. Welcome. I'm not welcome. Thank you so much for the welcome. I appreciate it.
Vhahangwele Tsotetsi, good evening to you.
Good evening to you, sir,
Good evening to your listeners.
Yes, and I see Alu is unfrozen. Alu, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Good evening to you and to the colleagues here.
Right, we're going to start off and just looking at the youth and the future of the youth. Now, I painted just a very brief picture in my introduction with regard to the youth, and coming up against the matric results that were announced last week. Now, the question, upfront, and perhaps Ayanda, looking at it, we know it needs to be celebrated because the youth have achieved a lot. It is a defining moment in their life. It is, something that needs to be celebrated, the end of their schooling career. But this is where the real world actually starts. This is where they start off going to university. This is where they start looking ahead at the future, at a career, at a job possibly as well. And just your thoughts, looking at the youth and where we are at this point in time against what we've seen happen in the last few days.
No, thanks, and good evening once again to the colleagues and to you as well. Well, one must acknowledge, firstly, that the Matric 22 class did very well this year. and it really showed that we have a different now caliber of students who are going to be entering the university, who are going to be, because through all the challenges, they've managed to champion everything and also go to the university and also to this world that is out here waiting for them. So firstly, we must congratulate them, and it's a job well done. But it's so unfortunate that they are now coming to add on the unemployment, on the unemployed statistics, precisely because it's not everyone who's going to go to varsity this year, and it's not everyone that is going to be accepted, even though they are willing. So we still have a problem there of the reasons. Why are they not going to find admission? What are the challenges? I think maybe along the show we'll also engage on that one. So it is very unfortunate when it gets to that part. And some are also going to be deserving and qualifying, but they won't be getting your assistance financially and so forth. So it's now the time where, if ever they were in a race, I would say that it's only now that it's beginning to be real and to mean something more especially to them. So we congratulate them, and we also need to speak on the challenges that they're going to face, because the system hasn't been good or hasn't been favorable for most of those who did well even this year. So that will be it for now.
Well, yes, thank you for that, Ayanda. And I just want to bring Alu Chokoe as far on the National Youth ICT Council, and looking at the youth now. We've seen since democracy, since 1994, we've seen an entire generation of youth come through a democratic system. And 20 odd years later, to find a situation where the youth seem to be very disillusioned and very uncertain under the present climate, under the present economic climate, and due to the lack of opportunities, the high stats, the 70% unemployment rate at this point in time. Does this give any hope to these matriculants that have just now performed exceptionally well, Alu?
Thank you for that question. I think, in fact, we first need to start analyzing the material conditions, particularly of the matriculants in rural South Africa. Now, these are people that may be far away from the heart of economic activity, and therefore they do not know the direct impact that, in fact, even an increase in the repo rate means. For them, their hope is, now that they've made it out of high school and they have university entrance, they are presented with an opportunity to better their lives in tertiary institutions, and then potentially be into the labor market. And unfortunately, and in South Africa, the most economically
Hello, I think we are having a bit of a problem. I think you've got a signal issue. Perhaps we're going to try and get hold of you on an
equal
audio
society in
so
the
that
world.
we can get a better
And
sound
this
quality.
is determined by also a number of factors. Okay, I'll try that.
Yeah. Okay, Alu, can you just try going on the audio?
Okay. Am
Yes,
I audible?
go ahead. Well, I would suggest that Alu obviously try and just log out and log in again. Hopefully, we will get her on a better line. Irfaan, perhaps you would like to just comment now. Obviously, looking at yourself as a youth with the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, the Youth Activism Program, and looking at youth, and we talk about the youth being our future. And with the lack of opportunities, with little opportunities at this point in time, how motivated are young people today? If you could just unmute your mic, please, Irfaan.
Apologies. Thank you so much for that question. I think how motivated young people are is a question I'd really like to answer just now. But before that, I want to caution us when we speak about just solely focused on the matric results and what they reflect. I agree with my brother Ayanda about congratulating the matrics who really have put in the work to achieve that 80% plus pass. But whether or not that's a true reflection is something we as society have to absolutely grapple with, because in reality, 4 out of 10 people who start school don't finish school. So when we speak of young people, we must be cautious to note that the end result of young people in matric is not actually the reflection of all young people who've gone into the system and not come out at the end with that matric certificate. So it's something to be cautious of when we do engage this topic. How motivated young people are, I can tell you a range of different experiences. In my case and in my experience with the youth activism program, when we attend and when we build youth clubs in different communities, we have found young people who are extremely motivated, who are willing to overcome the most harshest conditions, the more difficult conditions where unemployment, poverty, inequality continue to really set us apart. And despite those conditions, you find young people willing to organize, willing to come out and do programs, host support, create support networks for themselves and for others. So you do have on the one hand, a willingness and a very strong hope that things can change, and young people, I think by and large, want to be part of that change, because ultimately it's our futures that we have to grapple with. That harsh reality that if we don't sort things out now, in the future we won't have the kind of life that we all hope to live one day, and at least a decent life of comfort and of dignity. So I do think there is motivation, but equally I can't be sharing on a platform like this a fool's hope. I have to paint that picture that explains the harshness of that hope and that willingness and that motivation, because at many roadblocks and at many points in a young person's life, we continue to face barriers of entry. So for example, a huge systemic failure in our country that we have to grapple with is the fact that there are a couple of million young people who want to access higher education so that they can break that cycle of poverty, so that they can earn a better living. Those couple of million every year compete with, say, in the top, just the 20 universities in the top 20, 163,000 spots. So it doesn't make sense where you have systemic failures of millions of young people who want to and can, according to their matric pass, access that tertiary education, but then are excluded. So that's another picture to paint. And in addition to that is understanding why our TVET system is something that's often, as a society, not really placed in really high regard. We continue to have this conversation only about university, yet TVET colleges are what's going to help us in the pursuit of new jobs for young people, jobs that can bring that, with applied technical skills, you can earn a living. So I think there's that conversation that society really hasn't grappled with. And it's something that I think often demotivates us, because when we do want to pursue something, the system really creates those barriers that continue to push us back and back and back. And these then lead to many other things, like our poor mental health, like suicide, like young people using drugs, and so on and so on. So I'd like to leave it there for that moment, but I think it's important to paint that broad picture.
Well, I think it's extremely important, Irfaan, in terms of the picture that you paid in. I'd like to obviously interrogate the systemic failures that you speak about, but I also want to bring Vhahangwele back into the discussion. Now, I've seen a note, Vhahangwele, that I can't call you by the name Jamal as well, and I think it's easier on the tongue. So we are going to be calling you Jamal. The one issue that, just looking at your background, Jamal, chairperson, Project Youth SA, and Irfaan spoke about the harshness of the climate. And clearly, the climate at this point in time is extremely harsh as far as the youth is concerned. And, just looking at your position, looking at Project Youth South Africa, and against the harshness of this climate, what is the thinking? What are the youth actually saying? Do they think they've got any hope in this country?
Good evening to the viewers and the panelists once again. I hope I'm audible. So for my side, I think that there is like a lack of hope, to be honest. And the reason I'm saying that is because as you have highlighted earlier, that unemployment it's actually sitting at around 70%, right? And not everyone that finishes matric wants to go to university or further their education, right? So now it's a thing of like young people trying to find employment, and while there are no job opportunities, you see. And I think one thing that I need to mention is that our curriculum, right? Our curriculum, I'd love to say that it's actually outdated, because now there seems like to be like a lack of alignment between the education system and the workforce, which I believe like it is the contributing factor, to the lack of employability for young people in South Africa, right? So there isn't much hope when it comes to young people, and I think it's very difficult, to go to a young person and try to motivate them that to take this path, go to school, finish school, and if you have desire to go to higher to further your studies, apply and all that, and it's very difficult. And not everyone who has the desire to go to the higher education, can go there, because we're looking at the background. Most of the young people, they live in poverty and they don't have the means to further their education. So there's really like lack of hope, if I could put it like in that sense.
Well, thank you for that, Jamal. And let's bring Alu back into the discussion, and hopefully we will be having Alu on a better line now. Alu, I've also been informed that you are the Deputy Director, Parliamentary and Stakeholder Relations, Gauteng Department of Economic Development. So, you have got an insight as far as the government is concerned and the workings of the government as well, because, one needs to look at this problem of youth holistically. We need to look at the youth themselves. We need to look at the entire system and the systemic failures that Irfaan had actually spoken about. Now, you were obviously talking about the youth in the rural areas versus youth in the urban areas. And perhaps before we get to my next question to you and to look at it from a government's perspective, if you could just continue where you left off, where you were trying to obviously articulate the issue surrounding youth in the just looking at the geographic problems that youth actually face.
Thank you so much. So to continue where I left off, the reality is that when these hopefuls get to tertiary institutions and acquire their qualifications, they unfortunately become a part of the statistics. And now going back home is neither an option for them. So this is why some of them would end up partaking in criminal activities, end up smoking now on the streets and all of that. So we are a displaced nation and a displaced user society. I always say that perhaps then the youth of today should take it into their hands to say, are we building a capable developmental state? Has the ruling party failed in its effort to build a capable developmental state? And one other factor that we always speak about also within the ICT is that unfortunately, the reason why South Africa cannot move from where we are, and now this is being a spectator of all the industrial revolutions and all the epochs, into a place whereby we are now into the epoch of 4IR, where we are also creating economic opportunities for people who have just matriculated or people who have just graduated from tertiary institutions, is because how people relate with the ICT It can even be by means of a phone, depends on where you are in the country. So we can't move forward without trying to address the inequalities, obviously largely caused by the historic atrocities of our country. And we also have what we call apartheid spatial planning, whereby economic activity can only be limited to the elite few that stay in Johannesburg, but residents in Chokoe, already people of Tembisa have no economic access to economic activity. So I think it's largely us having to question the economic inequalities as a result of the atrocities of apartheid, the spatial planning that disallows particularly blacks, unfortunately, to participate in the mainstream economy, or in fact to even be inspired to also try to be entrepreneurial as well. I think to speak for, I've now moved to the Gauteng Department of Human Settlements and Infrastructure Development, but some of the opportunities that the Gauteng Department of Economic Development has created above the Gauteng Township Act, that says everything that government can do, we are taking to townships, we are creating a new economic geography in the townships. They also have TAPA 1 million. So with TAPA 1 million, this is where they collect all opportunities that the Gauteng provincial government has to offer, and the companies and businesses that operate within Gauteng. You know, we refer to Gauteng as the investment hub and the economic hub of the country. So they collect all the opportunities and they take them to townships for young people within the townships to apply for these opportunities. Because unfortunately, oftentimes you are requested to apply online. These people don't even have devices to apply online or to hand over these things at these specified companies. So government has made it easier by having road shows. So they say this particular day we are in this particular region across Gauteng, and this is what we'll be doing. So they assist you with application. It can even be for tertiary institutions for funding, business funding, employment opportunities. So I think that is efforts that government is trying to do. However, there's a lot that can still be done, and that also needs to be done. The democratic dispensation spoke about creating equality. Now, how do we then start to speak about economic equality? Economic equality would also say the minority who participate in the economy must also own commanding heights of the economy. You know, it can't be just the elite few that have access to these opportunities. And in fact, because now we have a tendency of not taking the education that I've learned in the cities to the townships, I think that's another factor that stifles development, to say we are not sufficiently reaching out to the people that we should be speaking to. And I also, in fact, us as activists, we are not doing enough to go back to our communities and say, for economic opportunities, let's venture into farming, let's venture into this, let's do this, let's do that, and this is how we can assist you. Perhaps Ayanda can assist with financial management, Irfaan can assist with marketing management, but we also need to take these deliberate efforts into our communities to say, okay, this is where we find ourselves, and this is what the Gini coefficient is saying. South Africa is named the most economically unequal society in the world, and it's reflected in a number of factors. But what are we doing also about it? We know that these are the statistics, but what can we do actively or proactively to contribute to the betterment of our society?
Thank you for that, Alu, and we'll try to bring Ayanda back into the discussion. Now, Ayanda, we've seen over the years the number of college graduates, university degree holders, they've increased over the past years. And as a result, we've seen many young people applying for jobs for the same position. At this point in time, the economic climate is one where there is extremely tough competition in the job market, specifically for entry-level posts. And perhaps you could just, expand on that, because when one looks at the many studies that have been conducted as well, and one I'd like to refer to, for example, is the banking sector, where a study shows that there are several factors that have perceived to be the causes of graduate unemployment in the South African banking system sector. You know, they talk about the lack of skills, there is a difference in expectations from employers and graduates as well. And just how do you see that? Because, we've seen, and I think in the past we have discussed this also in our media, where there have been even protest action on the part of unemployed graduates saying that, listen, we need to get into the system. We need to find a job. We need to do something with our lives.
Very loud and clear, Mr. Wadee. Well, this is a very much interesting topic, and somehow, somewhere, it has become ceremonial because we talk about these things. I was carefully listening to Alu there, alluding on what then needs to be done, but it goes back to opportunities. Do we have a fair access to opportunities? Because no matter how much we may be willing to help, but those resources, that information, those facilities comes back and contribute in towards bringing back to the community. So now what happens? You find that a number of people are going to apply. You're going to apply for a poster that you know very well that you maybe deserve, because not that you deserve because you were born from whatsoever family, but because you know what you fought and you've got your grades on par. So now only to find that no, the mayor or the councillor or whoever that is there, they now need to do a deployment. So right now the process becomes unfair for everyone. So now they will say no because there's my cousin there. So you find this thing goes on and on and on and on, and then you find that we are now being led by incompetent people, even when trying to resolve the problems. The people who are occupying positions, you find that they're incompetent because they have no idea on what needs to be done. This was just handed over to them. Hey, lead them here, lead here, because you must find something to eat as well. So this thing contributes as well to this high level of unemployment and to also the causes. It's been 29 years after democracy. Okay, this will be the 29th year. But we are still living under an unequal society. How so? Coming specifically to the one of institutions. You know that institutions, they are also racially segregated. Because if you compare your VETS, your TUT, your UKZN, your UniZulu, your Stellenbosch, your UJ, you'll find that their systematic approach even towards students is very much different, and there is a segregation. Then you know that the target that the university of students that they want to admit this year or that they want to prioritize, it's this class. The target and the type of people that Wits University wants to admit, it's this class. Now you find that this racial segregation goes back up to where you are from. And when you find that you are from a school that is on Quantal 1, there at Kwahlabisa, Mhlampe, Miso High School, you'll find that even if you've passed, but you're going to wait, even if you qualify, you will wait because we are waiting for people who are special breeds or who are special class in the society. So it's part of the problem. We are still living in an unequal society. Again, coming to the basic needs, when you compare your rural or your urban schools, they are totally different. It is going to hinder the results. So you find that there at Miso High School, as I made an example, it is underdeveloped, it is understaffed, it lacks facilities, and there is no even simple effort to upgrade. So you go to your urban schools, they've got computer labs. During computer time, there is no teacher who will just be standing there. Everything will be practical. During your science period, there is no teacher who will just be saying, do you know? Yes, we know a magnet. No, a magnet will be here. Chemistry, everything will be here. So that thing will easily generate a result that will be obviously good for a certain group. So we're still under this unequal agenda or unequal society. Again, who then falls trapped into the drugs? Once we've entered into drugs, there are slim chances of you to prosper. I don't want to lie. Most of the people, even those who have succeeded before, once they enter into the drug environment or the drug land, they just... You just tell, no, something is wrong here, because they don't move forward. You just get stuck. So now who gets to use these drugs and who falls to victim of these rapes? Because now you expect me to go and study at night so that I yield better results, because now I must add extra time because I'm disadvantaged. Now I go there, along the way walking, you find that a student is being raped. You must check also these cases on the statistics and say which people or which group of people fall into this trap of entering into drugs and also being victims of rape. So we also have the solutions, by the way, as the Unemployed Graduates Association. So I think we'll talk about them as we continue with the interview. So the last point will be the curriculum. Our curriculum is not assisting us actually. We're just studying for the sake of studying, so that we'll say I have matric, and then we go to university. There are courses that even when you just to check the meaning of these courses, they can't even write 2 lines, but it's a course offered in the university. Why? It's obsolete. So that anyone who didn't make it there, who didn't qualify proper there, must come and give money. So at some point, you asked a question earlier on, Wadee, to ask about the hope. So it will go back and say, no, man, how do we expect these people to have hope in the society or in the system that is so racially segregated, that is ruled by inequality? You find that now people are unemployed. Look at the stats of unemployment. Look at the struggle that is going to be happening as we speak in the universities. Other organizations have campaigns, your right to learn, your back to school, and so forth, because they understand the challenge that is there. They are not going there just to help anyone. There are specific class and group of people that they know these ones, they need our help. So even the curriculum, it must be reviewed. If you may ask and just have a topic, why are we saying that life orientation should be compulsory? And then after that, we want to test students up with LO. You go to university, LO is not being counted on your APS score. Why then do we prioritize it? Why don't we have an entrepreneurial skill or a trade subject that will enhance? Once you leave matric, you are somewhere already to start a business. You have the background information. Not that economics or other subject doesn't do that, but it must be direct and deliberate. The results. Why are we introducing this topic now? So again, the pass rate is 30%. We can celebrate, hey, students have passed, learners have passed, but 30% really. Dr. Wadee, Mr. Wadee, would you allow a person who got 30% on their driver's license? Would you say that person can drive you anywhere? No, you can't, because you know exactly sitting there that person hasn't done well on that thing. So why do we condone such behavior? And then we want to say because we want to score good marks and the rankings of our education and whatnot. So going back to that one of drugs, we've got a number of students who have qualifications in social work, for example. Social work, if you check, it is leading as well in the statistics of the unemployed graduates. So why can't we go to schools and say, let's deploy, because teachers are not trained to be social workers. What will a teacher tell a child that has been raped? Because a teacher is trained to go teach and go home and go to the bank, receive the money, go teach, mark, go. That's the process. But they can't speak. There is that psychological narrative that needs to be done. Why can't we deploy the social workers? Social worker, go to school. What is your duty? You are doing all psychological assistance. You are giving all the psychological needs and assistance to the children, because most cases are happening there. Teachers are raping students there, students raping each other, abuse, gender-based violence, and all sorts of abuse. So the last one maybe will be that the deployment should not be according to who you are. The deployment, even in the government officials, even for you to become a minister of education, you must have a qualification that speaks and relates closely to the education sector. Because this is why we're having a minister who's a baker, who likes cooking fish, who likes doing dishes, and then we deploy them maybe to the Department of Agriculture. Or maybe to a Department of Finance. What are we expecting with that person to become now? So that's an example that I'm trying to make, and I'll stop there for now, Dr. Wadee.
Well, thank you for that, Ayanda. And I noticed you called me Dr. Wadee. So my PhD, I graduated from your university. Thank you. I do appreciate it.
You must receive. It's professed.
Thank you for that, Irfaan. Let's come back and let's just unpack the systemic failures that you speak about. Now, there's, the panelists so far have unpacked so much. Talking about inefficiencies, incompetency, the whole issue surrounding an outdated curriculum. Now, all of this actually put together tells us that we have a huge problem, and there is something fundamentally wrong in the system. And let's just unpack a lot more in terms of what you actually meant by these systemic failures. And I'm sure a lot that the other panelists have said are possibly, part of or on the list of those systemic failures that you've been thinking about.
Yes, absolutely. I think, the panelists have already started alluding to them. Ayanda speaks to his first point in responding to Alu was around perhaps cadre deployment, or the idea that you're putting your proximity to someone who holds a political office allows you the opportunity to get into various roles within the governance. I think there's a huge problem in society with that, in that we've not been able to adequately look at governance and look at the political system and how we want those to operate in different ways. I think society, by and large, today as it stands, yearns and is in that regard. You see it with the various conversations and campaigns around electoral reform. You see it within local government, where almost majority of our municipalities are failing. I took a smile earlier when Ayanda mentioned this, because we had got recent information and data from somewhere in the Northern Cape, where the towns are quite small, and you had people who were known to be aligned to a particular party given that particular jobs. Whereas the rest of the town, everyone, so you're like, no, this doesn't make sense, because you don't have the qualifications and so on. So it's quite glaring in that in the governance system really needs a shake-up, in where public servants, one, are not easily swayed solely by the political office bearers, but also it works both ways, because that's the nature of the democratic system we want. I will, however, also comment on the fact that when we speak about curriculum, and I think I agree that we do need to change curriculum so that it's relevant, so that we speak into where potential new jobs can exist. And I know, Alu, being in the ICT sector, there's scope for more growth within that space. Yet very few of our schools are actually geared up. And aside from schools, we also when we talk about the entire system, teachers themselves not trained adequately in within that field, or have those skills. So I want to caution, for me, as an educator, postgraduate as well, one of my majors was life orientation, and I think there's huge scope for life orientation to actually benefit society if actually taught the way it should be. In life orientation, you have huge opportunities to engage young people on democracy, on social cohesion. All these aspects you see in broader society that are eroding could be engaged on at that level, and yet it isn't. It isn't because we've bastardized, sorry for a better word, that kind of subject, where even in schools it's not taken seriously. Life orientation teachers are often sidelined for what we call like the maths or English, and if there's something more important, they'll almost take those periods to say, you can catch up at a later point. I've seen teachers who literally just go into the class, open the textbook, write from the textbook into people's books, and that's it. No teaching and learning can actually be engaged on in that kind of context. So there's, I think, a huge debate as a country that we need to have on education as a whole, curriculum included, but it speaks to teacher training, it speaks to infrastructure. It can't be that majority of our schools don't have sports fields. Sports fields are part of what we want, young people to be active, to be healthy, to be engaged. When we see at the national level our sports teams aren't transformed, we can't be screaming and shouting solely at that point. It starts at the grassroots level. It starts at the school that's not encouraging young people to take up tennis, to take up rugby. And that's part and parcel of the systemic failures, is that we aren't applying collectively. Yes, I think a huge responsibility is on government and the private sector, but as society, as ordinary people, me, you, our communities, our streets, we haven't really gotten into the process of hosting these critical debates. And I think that's partly all of us to blame, but it's also how we reshape that, so that when we speak to the school in our community, the community is fully aware of it, and they invest their time, their money, their efforts into building schools. And we've seen that model working. When you invest yourself in that, and create that pipeline, so that the business and the local economy in that particular area can start benefiting from the young people that are being produced from that system. And I don't like using that language of people being produced, but for lack of a better word, I think it's important to recognize that we have to equally invest ourselves in it. If we're not going to do that, we continue to see these inefficiencies. Equal to this, I also want to draw attention to the fact that soft and foundational skills are often a challenge, and you see it when people graduate and move into corporate and engaging many business leaders. You find that that's a challenge. You open up a post, hundreds of people apply. The challenge there is that inability to communicate, inability to deal with not too complex things, the emotional intelligence, how you engage with people, etiquette, and so on, behaviors that were spoken about earlier. Those start from the home, but also schools can play a huge role in this. There was a note I made specifically to, I just want to bring it out now, on systemic barriers. And earlier it was mentioned, the fact that the economy is still by and large a very one-sided one, a lopsided one. And I think here is, as young people, importantly grappling with how that looks and how that needs to change. It could be in engaging why the transport is barely existent. So you can link this up to not being able to have the safety of taking a public train to your home and getting on and coming back and to your workplace, to your school, and so on. In addition, I think I mentioned before, so 100% of the young people that start schooling, only 13% of that complete or get into university. And that's the challenge and the systemic barrier that I think I want to leave us to think about, is because if we're only speaking to this 13%, what happens to all of the others who don't get absorbed? And that the informal economy ultimately here is what's really keeping this country together. It's what's ensuring that there's bread on the table. It's what's ensuring that there's at least something to eat at home for entire families, because ultimately those responsibilities start getting placed on young people who have to look after their families. And in the economic environment we're in, that's something that shouldn't be the case. We're not imagining a society outside of that immediate crisis that we're in. And I think once we start breaking down those things, with the governance changing, and I think with, by and large, a political alternative that must really get us out of this mess, where people are centered once more and where communities can find hope once again, and can find the ability to rise up and exercise their agency wherever they may be.
Yes, and also to bring Jamal back into the discussion. Jamal, I think, just looking at this problem, not only from an economic perspective, but looking at it from a social perspective, looking at social cohesion. And what we find in South Africa, unemployment obviously has left thousands of young people feeling very hopeless. And to a large extent, we've seen a rise in a lot of actions like xenophobia. We've seen hatred and violence amongst the youth. We've seen racial violence. We've seen so much, and all of it in the name of a lack of jobs. And the core to this is poverty. And this is an issue that doesn't seem to be getting prominence. And it's an issue that doesn't seem to be a priority. And just looking at it largely from a social perspective, looking at society at large, looking at business, looking at government as well in terms of tackling this problem.
Sorry, there's a bit of a glitch. Can you please repeat the question?
I'm saying looking at, social ills within the youth and looking at social cohesion or building social cohesion. Now, we've seen unemployment that has left many young South Africans feeling hopeless. And as a result, we've seen so much. We've seen violence, we've seen xenophobia manifest itself. And a lot of it can be attributed to poverty and a lack of jobs. And very little seems to be done or tackled looking at it from a social perspective, looking at government, looking at business, and looking at society at large in addressing this problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to know that our government, I think they've had about, I think it's been like 28 years now, to address, the past injustices. But looking at where we are right now, not much has been done, and all these social issues are actually manifesting, into things like xenophobia and crime, gangsterism, abuse of alcohol. So the government, to be honest, I don't think they are in a space where they have a plan with regards to the progress of this country, and also making sure that the young people of this country are actually they are provided with job opportunities. And just before I go further, I just want to go back to the education curriculum that I was talking about a bit earlier, right? And I mentioned that the reason for young people not being employable is because of our curriculum. And I say this because it's not in alignment with the workforce. I'll give you an example. One of the example of this is that the current curriculum doesn't place enough emphasis on science, technology, and engineering, mathematics to add to that, and which are high in demand in industries. So, and again, according to research by the South African Institute of Race Relations, about 1/3 of matriculants, right, in South Africa pass mathematics, and I think less than 10% pass physical science. So there's just a lack of emphasis on those subjects, and I think the curriculum is updated, and it definitely needs to be revised. And if I could just provide with like solutions to that, one of them would be like developing a vocational training programs. So I think those ones would be developing vocational training programs that provide students with skills needed to pursue a career in technical fields, fields like engineering and technology. So on my side, I think the emphasis has to be more on the curriculum itself, because it's not in alignment, with what the employers want, and so yeah, I think I would just like leave it there for me.
For that, Jamal, and also to bring Ayanda back into the discussion. Now, we are talking, and I think I need to obviously raise this issue as well with you, because, there have been a lot of protest action that has taken place, and a lot of it directed at government as well. And looking at government and government taking responsibility in addressing the problem, are you disappointed that government has not done enough? I think Ayanda we've lost Ayanda. I'm hoping it's not the dreaded load shedding, because that's basically been kicking in here as well. But Irfaan, perhaps, you'd just like to obviously address that issue with regard to the government, and what is the government doing? Is the government doing enough?
Yes, sure. I think also the point that Jamal makes, I want to touch on it as well. I think we do need to have that. That's part of the systemic challenge that I'm speaking of, in linking curriculum to the actual job markets out there. On another hat that I wear, on the Gauteng Youth Advisory Panel that advises the provincial government, we were engaged in a couple of months of trying to put together a strategy for the province in addressing these challenges. But our big problem statement was really the NEET rate. And the NEET rate is those young people not in education, employment or training at all. And, that stat speaks to a couple of million young people, not just, small numbers that we can just try to address and localize. So in doing so, a lot of the feedback that we did get from young people themselves was that the challenge really is the opportunities available to young people, the opportunities in every regard to upskill themselves, to support them. One of the things that I think stands out is the fact that a thing like a CV, right? We assume from a privileged point of view that it's easy for us to just put one together and apply for a job. Yet, by and large, the access to the laptop or the computer that you can actually type this out is limited. The access to how a CV should look and that kind of training is limited. So yes, schooling systems should have taught this, but it's quite clear that it's not the case. And this is at a very basic level. And a more difficult, complex level is engaging on that subject matter. When we speak to the issues of maths and science, we fare very low in the country. So I do agree, but it's equally hard to do that when you have schools that young people can't even access because the path to get there means that they have to cross bridges and rivers because there's just no infrastructure. The infrastructure has dilapidated or been destroyed or vandalized. Or you go into schools where, in fact, a very shocking stat within Gauteng was during the COVID period, many schools were burgled and equipment was stolen. The provincial government, I'd give them that in this particular context in Gauteng, there's been a huge push to get schools of specialization built, which I think are really new innovative ways to link, the schooling system to tertiary to the jobs and to things like aviation, for example, directly getting young people at a young age to understand what aviation is, the technical stuff, and so on and so on. But within a context like ours, that kind of investment that is being placed by government in schools is often then challenged because the societal failures and fragments, where you put that in and 3 months down the line, the school is burgled and things are stolen and or damaged. So again, it speaks to a multi-layered approach where society, communities need to take ownership and investment in a child's life. I think it's there's a reason why we say it takes a village to raise a child, and it's because ultimately all of us have to make a contribution, whether or not that is our child or not. And that requires us to ask of us, what do we serve on the local SGB board, and ensure that we take our skills. It's something Ali was mentioning earlier, about how do we, as qualified people, as skilled people, go into the community and utilize that there. Because if you think of corruption in this country, huge elements of corruption happen there at a very localized level at the SGB. So where decisions are made on budgets for school allocation. I can tell you now, there's allocations from government for schools to run sports programs, and yet those schools and those learners never get to see a soccer ball. So it's part and parcel of these fragments. So to get to that point around what government is doing, I think there's good examples, but there's also really bad examples, and that's because I think the governance model is failing. The inability of it was mentioned by Anda earlier, the wrong people are taking up positions, unqualified, I don't have the experience to lead teams, to lead in complex areas and in complex matters. And this is what's holding us back. And it shows where good governance works, things are delivered upon, and we can actually see progress and track that progress. But it's a multifaceted question that requires different I mean, I'm answering it from a governance level. If you look at participation in democracy, the same example of the SGB, you have people who have occupied positions of that as those SGBs for years, and it's become a not an uncontested space. And whether you contest it as a young person, you also equally then push back to say, no, know your place. This is not for you. So we have a lot ahead of us that I think we have to do, but I don't think we can exclude government from that conversation. We can be angry and demand better of government and up the standard of government and the delivery of government. But that requires us all to ask ourselves whether or not the people who are leading that government are actually capable of doing so. And if not, who among us is going to stand up and rise to the occasion and say, look, I think we have what it takes to shift this country onto a positive growth path, where that development state that Alu was speaking about is realized, where we don't have the young people loitering in the streets during school hours, where we actually see and nurture young people's talent. I mean, I didn't have an opportunity in school to do drama or art, and that's because the school I went to just didn't offer it. And these are the kinds of things that many schools are plagued with. Opportunities to grow and to harness our full potential is what the society should be created to do, and yet we don't see that happening. So it's ability for us to do that collectively and do it well enough.
Well, thank you for that, Irfaan. And Ayanda, just coming back to you, Ayanda, looking at the youth, they form a large proportion of the South African population. Now, they present a significant opportunity to promote recovery, growth, the advancement of the economy. And they are an ever-ready, skilled workforce that is available to the country. And it is absolutely important, it is critical to address the youth graduate unemployment challenge, because at the end of the day, we are not short of policy in this country. We've had so many youth summits in the past to address the issue, but what the nation requires is to address this problem, peacefully, and also at the same time to ensure that there is political, there is economic stability. But again, we've seen youth protesting over and over again. And to a large extent, in fact, Irfaan spoke about public participation. He spoke about school governing bodies. And there is a lot that society can contribute, professionals within society, but also looking at business and also at the same time, government, because on the one hand, it's good to have policies, but these policies, if they're not implemented, this is where we have a problem.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Ayanda.
Yes. Can you repeat the question for me, please? My volume is a bit low the side, but I can hear you now.
Okay, Ayanda, what I've said is the problem is South Africa has got a large proportion of our population that consists of youth. They present opportunities in promoting recovery, growth, and the advancement of the economy. They are an ever-ready workforce, especially looking at those who are graduates and that are highly skilled to tackle the many problems that the country is actually faced with. And looking at it from a policy perspective, we are not short of policy as far as youth are concerned. We are not talk that has been taking place. We've seen so many summits, youth summits taking place to address this issue. And for us to move forward, to ensure that we've got peace, we've got political and economic stability in the country, it's good to have policies, but these policies need to be implemented.
This time around, my line is very bad, but I don't know if I heard you properly. I'll try and respond on that. It is true that everything before it's being done, it must be adopted, must be drafted, the policy, it must be adopted, and then comes a role that to be played by the executors. The people will be given a responsibility now to make sure that this policy is being followed and it's being implemented.
So now what we need is a group of people who are dedicated, qualified, and ready to serve, not people who are just in proximity and ready to eat. So with that being said, I think we will then now, so because when we talk about South Africa, we're talking about the country that has good policies. Some of them, if you use them to get a wife, you get a number of wives because they are so attractive and so forth. But now let's go to the execution part. Let's implement. We find that we have zero vision or interest of implementing any of that. As the Unemployed Association, we've also submitted some of the documents to the government because one organization helps graduate students to integrate into a skilled workforce. So we also offer support and learning programs for graduates and students from personal to professional development. So now how do we do this? We understand that there are courses that are regarded to be obsolete. So now the government doesn't talk about those courses. Even when you pass your matric, you're not being told about courses. So what are these courses? It's these courses that you know very well that you're studying them for the sake of being inside the university. But when you leave the institution, chances of you to finding an employment are very thin. So now the information we give to these students and graduates it also speaks to what are relevant courses that one can study for. Because now the way work has changed, I doubt that we are still that generation that says we just go to university and become whatever that we want. Now we look into a number of perspectives before we decide what to study. Because if you just go for any course, you will end up being unemployed but qualified. So we offer assistance, and then with an aim, of course, of unlocking employment opportunity. So we consider ourselves really as a country that has already entered the fourth industrial revolution, and which we were sold as dream Woody. We are now going to be employable, and if you are employed, you'll be retainable. So, but there is no strategy around that. So we do have strategies as well to say, how do we produce employable and retainable graduates? Because some people, you will say, I want to, they can't even change the course, or maybe they can't even do what we call a reskilling. To say that you've started this course and you're good at it, but now because the opportunity is open on this side. So again, looking at dismantling unemployment in South Africa and also provide access to equal opportunities for everyone. As the South Africa is for everyone. So even us as an organization, we are under the impression of accessing everyone who needs help. So I didn't quite get the question very well, but when we speak of the policies, I think I'll have that to mention, which will help the people who are going to implement, and maybe just to wrap up maybe the solution that we might have towards this issue.
Well, thank you for that, Ayanda. I see we've got Alu back online. Alu Chokoe is back with us, and I just want to engage with Alu on this particular matter. Looking at South Africa, Alu, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much.
Right, Alu, let's talk about leadership. Because, when we're talking about forging leaders of tomorrow, and amidst this youth unemployment crisis that we are faced with, Nelson Mandela once made the statement saying that the working youth is critical to our future. The economy depends on you. With your hard work and efforts at improving your skills, you can make ours one of the most prosperous nations in the world. And with the challenges, with the dilemma that the youth are faced with at this point in time, looking at leadership, growing leadership, going into the future, and the danger is we may be faced with a huge leadership crisis, a leadership vacuum with the problems that youth are actually faced with, and all these challenges that are not being addressed. And this is the reason why we see a lot of the anger amongst the youth, because of these lack of opportunities, and they see no hope.
Thank you for your question. In fact, a few months ago, I was making a comment on the fact that we have liberation fighters, or rather struggle stalwarts, that think we owe them for going to exile to fight for our liberation. Now, I'm saying this because the question of the type of leadership that we have at the helm is directly proportional to the type of country that we seek to build. We see countries like China that deploy based on meritocracy. And we have a South Africa whereby we speak of building a capable developmental state, yet a merit that you must have is that you slept in the bushes and you can handle a gun. So these are also necessary conversations that we need to have to say, yes, we are building a country, but what type of a leadership do we have at the helm? You know, and we also, look, truth of the matter is that we cannot be led by common sense. If we are to build a capable developmental state that we speak of on a daily, then we need to have experts at the helm. We need to have lawyers, accountants, engineers, economists, people with great foresight, and not just people who are good at sloganeering. I must say as well that, look, as I had also mentioned earlier on, that South Africa is the most economically unequal society in the world, and the inequality is also mirrored in our education. Perhaps then we have the caliber of the leadership that we have because of the caliber of the membership that the particular leadership has as an organization. A year ago, we were speaking about the 2021 July unrest. And one particular point that I said is that, protests in South Africa are characterized by violence. You know, we are such a violent nation, and it is also the violence of poverty. And now there's also the violence of an uninformed society that does not believe in itself or that has no patriotism. So we cannot build a country when all those factors are not in check. You know, so and a debate that we had with the recent ANC conference is that, well, I had wished that, number one, the leadership of the ANC, because that is the leadership of our country, must mirror the policies that they speak of in government, whereby they say there's a compulsory retirement age of 65 and one of voluntary at 60. Why do we have an 80-year-old wanting to determine our future as young people? I think that is one problem that I have. Secondly, why are young people also comfortable in supporting the elderly who are selling this country to the highest bidder? Look at the load shedding now, and we're speaking about the high unemployment rate. We have companies such as even Samsung, such a huge company that is retrenching due to the ongoing load shedding that's going on in the country, and the leadership at the helm has no solutions. You know, during COVID, we had the president address us every second week, taking us into confidence in the plans of government to mitigate the impact of COVID, particularly on the poorest of the poor. And we also had this grant that was introduced to mitigate the effects that the pandemic may have on the poorest of the poor and the most destitute. We have an energy crisis. All we hear is the president saying his hands are tight. He's not addressing us. The economy is going down. So I think inherently we do have a leadership problem as a country. And I should say this, even though I'm fond of the policies of the ANC, I think the members of the ANC and the leadership of the ANC are holding ransom our dream of building a capable developmental state. And therefore, we will never realize the economic opportunities or the economic haven that we so seek, because
these people are at the helm of government. They have no ideas. They don't want to consult with anybody. They think they're doing their best, but instead they're breaking this country down. But definitely we have a leadership problem, and we have young people who are not coming to the party. You know, you'd have keyboard activists now. When we refer to keyboard activists, we refer to people that want to be on social media and bash a particular government, but they don't take it to the streets to say, we are not satisfied with whatever it is that you're doing, and we want answers. So basically, we have a leadership problem in the country, and until we solve the leadership problem that we have in the country, we will not build the meritocratic developmental state that we always speak of.
Yes, thank you for that, Alu. And just to bring Jamal back into the discussion. Now, Jamal, we are often here when we analyze and when we look at the country's economic problems, we always hear about money, we hear about foreign investment, ESCOM as well. We talk about funding. And one thing we've forgotten is social capital, because the human capital in the country, which is also just as lucrative as money. And at the end of the day, when we are trying to grow our social capital, when we are trying to grow our human capital against the background of what Alu actually speaks about, and she spoke about the COVID pandemic, the ESCOM, the retrenchments, the loss of jobs. Now, all of that seems to be taking a bit of a backseat, and the focus a lot is growing the economy as through investments and the like, which is absolutely necessary. But at the end of the day, one should not forget that there is a huge human cost, and the cost to the youth is astronomical as we speak right now.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think it goes to show that, we have government that is not, it doesn't care about its people. All it cares about, it's the reputation, that they have to keep, and that they have to show to the world. That's the problem that they have. Because speaking of this load shedding issue, I think a week ago, I think it was Sowetan, they released a list of businesses that are actually affected by this load shedding. Actually, the businesses that are actually closing due to this load shedding thing. So it's quite disastrous. So the kind of society that our government is creating, it's actually creating a society, a frustrated society. And I'll just go back to the point that Alu was making about the the 2021 July unrest, right? So it's a thing of, we have a problem with unemployment in this country. And just like Alu said, we protest in South Africa actually culturalized in violence, right? So whenever there's a protest or there's an opening, people will always resort to looting, vandalism, and all those things. And to be honest, we can blame those people who loot and all those things. But we is to survive.
Well, Jamal, yes, I'll get back to you, Jamal, in a minute. I see Irfaan has sent a message saying that he's got to leave in a few minutes' time. So I just want Irfaan to just come in and just some final thoughts from Irfaan with regards to implementation, because I see Irfaan has raised a question: who is responsible for implementation? And also the comment that Irfaan has made saying we need leaders fit for purpose. So Irfaan, I know you're going to leave in a few minutes. Just some, the whole question surrounding implementation, and just some final thoughts from you.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed the session, and I've learned so much from the fellow panelists. And I think this conversation, like Alu said, it can't be online. These things have to translate into actual practical engagements where we can debate ideas and contest them and find ways in which to implement the most suitable given the context we are in. I think when we speak to implementation, I did mention in my previous inputs that it really comes down to the people who have the abilities and skills to do so. We're struggling with a community library, community clinic that's been built but unable to open. And this is a result of people who are in positions that don't know what they're doing. They are unsure of the legal frameworks, they're unsure of their own entities frameworks. And as a result, the people are suffering. Hundreds of thousands of rands gets paid for insurance because of that kind of incompetence, because that thing is delayed and delayed and delayed, and the opening kind of happen. And as a result, communities get more frustrated, and eventually what happens is that violence is enacted on the symbol of that inadequacy, which is then the structure that was built or attempted to be built. Tomorrow we just got word that there's an entire there's a call for a shutdown of this particular road that leaves Lenasia, that passes Lehigh and so on. And that's because for years now, that entire road, which is used by trucks, by buses, by daily people, commuters daily who get to school, who go to university for economic purposes because there are farms and other things there, that entire road is going to be shut down. But again, shut down because of incompetency of people who can't deliver on what they promise. In that same discussion is something I want to allude to, or what Alu said, is our nature of our protest. Any day we could wake up, I can find you a protest somewhere, given the nature of protest today in this country. There's protest everywhere. But I think it speaks to the information we have as a society, as a collective. And I think part of my work in the last few years has been so focused on ensuring we bring in civic education, and we bring in voter education, and we bring in human rights education, so that young people are engaging on this. They're building a consciousness and awareness around what this society is, what the systems that govern us is, and how do we best use this to actually create some change and just get some justice. And we've seen degrees of success in this, but I think there needs to be a bigger collective effort. And I'm quite hopeful that that could be realized very soon, because we are building quite a mass coalition of young people. And this youth coalition started last year, and it was as a protest on June 16th. And now it's shaped and formed into something bigger, where the partners are coming together, the youth organizations are coming together, and they're saying, okay, how do we get this thing to work so that more young people find platform through this, find voice through this, and are able to become the leaders that we need for taking us out of the mess. And I think just an invitation to the fellow panelists for your respective organizations to engage this kind of coalition, because the ones we do have that are supposedly representative of youth don't actually represent our collective vision for this country. And I'm hopeful that this coalition can do that and achieve it, given the support it needs. But that's the last parting shot I want to give, and shukran for having me. Assalamu alaikum.
Well, shukran to you as well, Irfaan, for being part and parcel of this very important discussion. And I'm sure we've only scratched the surface. There's a lot more that we can talk about, but we do appreciate you taking time out and being with us this evening. We wish you all the best. And just to continue with Ayanda, Ayanda, looking at the youth today and how they see the political system within which we are operating and what they have been exposed to. Do they have confidence in the political system to do something about the problems, the challenges, and the dilemma that they are faced with? Ayanda, if you could unmute your mic, please.
Repeat the question for me.
Yes, I'm saying that, looking at the youth, and clearly that there is a lot of disillusionment within the youth, and looking at the confidence. Do they express confidence in the political system that they are exposed to at this point in time to be able to address, their future, so that there is some hope for them going forward?
To be quite honest, I think earlier on this interview, one has alluded that it's been 28 years and this is the 29th year after democracy. So, as we all understand that South Africa is a country that is led by the African National Congress as the ruling party, and then what does that mean? It means that since from 1994, because we've only had one ruling party, from then up to now, only one party has been in governance, and we've achieved so much, and I think it is through its work. But now there are other formations that are speaking of things that haven't been done. So with the hope in the political sphere, we honestly do not have that much of a hope in the political sphere of South Africa, because you find that now things have tended to become ceremonial speeches. They'll tell you that we want to build a better life for all. Come elections, you will find only rich people's faces on the t-shirts. You'll be given your food parcels, and maybe they will come to your house and maybe help you with painting and stuff. But the reality of the matter is that it solves the problems that we are facing as the country? Does it speak to the core problems and the challenges that our people are facing? And the answer is one. No. If you have your protests that are illegal, if you still have your people still living in an unequal society, if you still have a high volume of cases of gender-based violence and crime levels, corruption, number of illegal immigrants within the country, you ask yourself if maybe we really need to change our electoral system. And maybe we must do away with this party system thingy, because it represents only a dream, and there is less that has been done, to be quite honest, because most of the crucial basic things hasn't been done. So there's little hope, and there's little faith in politics or in the broader scheme of politics, because this is just a money-making scheme to say that if we win, we get deployed. Because at least if maybe people who are deployed into position were to be found doing or delivering in the communities, some are doing that. But you know that if you are a group of people working towards a certain goal or certain mission, and you are the only one working, and maybe only the few are working, and then the majority are not doing anything, then surely that program won't move. So we still need new, fresh organizational parties that are going to convince us, or we still need new faces within the existing parties to maybe speak not with their mouths, but speak with practicality. Let it now be a loud sound of work. Let it not be speeches. We are tired of speeches now, Shemai. We are tired. Manifestos, they don't even change. You can even sing a manifesto of any party, because nothing has been done. They'll keep on saying those things. The only thing that we need is just people who are going to execute. We just need people who are going to be honest, people who are going to do the groundwork, go deal with the community issues. I think I'll have to end there.
Yes, no problem. Thank you for that, Ayanda. And in fact, what I will do is, Jamal, I haven't forgotten about you, but I just want to bring Alu in. And just a thought that had actually crossed my mind is Ayanda was talking, is Alu looking at it from a woman's perspective. And this is important to understand, because there's all this talk about inclusivity of women, including them in the economy, include them in society, and also looking at, I've seen gender-based violence is an issue that has been spoken about quite a few times during the course of this broadcast. And just the thinking of young women against what we have been talking about until now.
Thank you so much for that question. So to start on the matter of gender-based violence, Interpol has named South Africa the world's rape capital, with women in the country more likely to be raped than educated. And unfortunately, as mirrored and as reflected by economic inequalities, we know that historically men are more viable to participate in the economy and are more favored to participate. Now, this then puts women in a very vulnerable position because they now have to depend financially on men. And this is where abuse starts and where it emanates. I move in with my partner because I'm unemployed. He comes back home angry for whatsoever reason and takes out his anger on me. So it also has a great impact on gender-based violence, this issue of economic participation. So now, again, women have always borne the brunt of everything else that happens in society, be it societal ills, revolutions that happen in society, educational advancement. And this is why now governments of the world have been trying to say we are prioritizing the girl child with funding for education. And now, and unfortunately, you can get matriculants, which are girls, coming to tertiary with no bursary, and therefore they are homeless. What then happens, they meet a young man driving a Polo or an Audi at the corner. He says, come stay with me, and then they start being abused then. But because they are in a desperate situation, they cannot say or even speak out against the abuse because at the current moment, I have nowhere to go. And me staying with this person is better than staying in the streets or begging for jobs in the streets and then going to sleep in the streets at the end of the day. So whatever disadvantages that happen in society, women also bear the brunt. We also have an issue. In fact, during the 2021 unrest, there's an iconic picture of a woman who had to throw her child down. Luckily, there were protesters outside that caught the child because of a building that was attacked by other protesters. So I say, whatever happens in society negatively impacts women. And we also know that economically, it is men that would be given preference. I know that, so a few months ago during, I think it was in October, the UN was commemorating the Equal Pay Day. And the question of South Africa was different, unfortunately, to say South Africa has not reached a level whereby men and women have equal opportunities because South Africa has had to prioritize racial equality. Now, this is when trying to level the playing field for blacks, colored, and Indians to the same standard of whites, as historically they've always been the ones that have been favored. So it also becomes a problem when they come to tertiary institutions. As a girl child, I can't be sleeping in the library because probably there are 10 men that are also sleeping in the library. It also puts me in a position where I may potentially be sexually assaulted. Statistics South Africa do show that in every 3 minutes, one of us is raped or killed. So it greatly negatively impacts women. And I always say, if you want to derive the value of women, look at how we were raised in townships. I think it's a global phenomenon to say, when we speak of it takes a village to raise a child, we are making the greatest reference to the woman. And I'm saying this because in a personal experience, when my mother was out or my grandmother was out running errands, she would leave me with the woman next door who would care for me. And then she would come back home and get me fed, well-dressed, cleaned, without expecting anything in return. And now the norm was created because men were the ones that were expected to go participate in the economy and women are housekeepers. And unfortunately, this is still inherent in rural South Africa. There's just high levels of patriarchy where you'll be told you're a girl child, you're going to be someone's wife, so there's no need for us to be investing in your education. So they prioritize the boy child. So these are still challenges that we're still facing. And in fact, these are the triple challenges that we speak of. In fact, we say women are the face of the triple oppression in South Africa. Now, this is being born, okay, black women in this case. This is being born black, being born poor, and being born woman, because you are already born with a system that disadvantages you.
Well, thank you for that, Alu. And I see Jamal, we've lost him as well. Innocent, I'm not too sure if he's still with us as well. But it does appear as if possibly as a result of signal issues, possibly the baby load shedding issues that have actually kicked in. I see Ayanda is still with us. Ayanda, we've got a few minutes. Just some final thoughts from you before we wind down the program. If you could unmute your mic, please, Ayanda.
With me. No, I think one will have to just encourage the group of matriculants that made it this year, and the ones that couldn't make it this year, to say that it's not over. They still need to go back to school. It is important that we find that piece of paper at the end of the day. You climb, or rather, you sit at a better position if you've got that paper. As useless as it may seem, looking at the system that we operate under. But at the end of the day, we need to go to school, and we need to go to those TVET colleges, we need to go to universities, and also we need to take those apprenticeships, learnerships, and go study. As long as we're at school studying towards something, that's it. And also to encourage those who are also within the universities finding difficulties dealing with every issues that are there, and as far as paying late, not being admitted on time, not knowing whether you'll find residence, or all those challenges, they just need to stay strong and focused. We are here today. It's not that it was easy, even though we're still in the pool of the unemployed youth, but we conquered, we made it through all those difficult challenges that will come along the way. And yeah, that's it. Let's apply, let's play, let's use the internet for good things. Let's network, because to be quite honest, in these days, you won't survive without a certain connection, and not a connection that's of proximity to which you know who and you know who, but also to having to find out what is it that you do, because it's not on the basis of friendship, the kind of network and communication that I'm talking about. It's the one that says, what are you doing? And how would I need you in future, and what am I doing? So let's find ourselves busy. Let's get busy. So let's attend those imbizos, those indabas, and also for the matric that are going to do, people who are going to do matric this year. I wish that the educators and all the NPOs and the groups that are dealing with education to take this one into serious consideration. Let's go back to schools. Let's do the career guidance, a proper informed career guidance, not the one that says if you want to go and do politics, you need to have your 4 in English. That is basic career guidance. But let's go back now and analyze how are the chances of finding employment after studying that qualification, and what is required now in the job market, what is needed, where should we go? So we need to do that research and go back to schools and advise on that. I think I'll have to end it there, and Happy New Year to everyone, and may this year be filled with a lot of a high level or volume of hardworking spirit. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that, Innocent. And really, it's been wonderful having you part of the panel discussion, and the value that you brought to the discussion this evening. We certainly do appreciate it. And just getting final thought from Alu Chokoe as well. Alu, in Maha's it's the women who have the final words. So I'm going to give you the opportunity of having the final thoughts.
Thank you so much. I always say we should attribute a lot more to women, particularly for their participation in the struggle and how they've led a lot of marches, peaceful marches, and they've pioneered. So my parting words, fortunately or unfortunately, we cannot, as young people, sit and allow our future to be determined in our absence. We need young people to fight for their future, take advantage of the opportunities presented, and as Ayanda has said, go to school. Robert Sobukwe said it best to say, for us, education is the greatest investment and it is service to Africa. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that. And also to the other panelists, Jamal, Tsotetsi, Irfaan, Mangera, who left us, and also to Ayanda, Khumalo, Alu, Chokoe. We thank you. It's been most absorbing. It's been most interesting. And I believe that we have unpacked quite a bit this evening during the course of discussion. So all the best to you. And we thank you all for your participation. Now, that brings us to the end of another edition of Wednesday Night with myself, Inayet Wadee. And yes, we tackle issues, current issues. We tackle challenges that we are faced with in more ways than one, politically, economically, socially, socio-economically, and the whole question surrounding the youth and the youth being our future. From what we are seeing, there are dark clouds actually that are hanging over our youth, and we trust and hope and we pray that the situation does improve so that they have a bright and a successful future ahead of them. And with that, I'm signing off this evening from myself and the team at Salam Media. We wish you well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.